Now, the executive director of the International Campaign to Abolish Nuclear Weapons couldn't believe it at first. The organization won the Nobel Peace Prize. She thought it was a prank. Beatrice Fihn joins me via Skype from Geneva. She joins us now. Beatrice, congratulations. It was not a prank. Your group has indeed won the Nobel Peace Prize. How are you feeling right now, and how do you think it could change your work?
Well, I'm very, very excited, very honored. It's been a very intensive few hours since the announcement was made. But obviously, this means everything for people that have worked tirelessly against nuclear weapons, for nuclear disarmament for decades. It's an extremely important acknowledgement of that hard work.
Yeah. And thanks to your work, that treaty was reached earlier this year at the UN to ban nuclear arms. But now comes the hard part. You know, how do you plan to move beyond the agreement and bring about the actual destruction of all nuclear weapons?
Well, I think that this treaty is really supposed to do something very important that we missed. It's supposed to stigmatize and remove the prestige of nuclear weapons. We will not come to disarmament unless we agree as an international community that we do not want these weapons, that they do not provide safety and security. So I think that this treaty will put nuclear weapons together with other weapons of mass destruction that have been prohibited, biological weapons, chemical weapons. It's a long process, of course. The prohibition is just a start, but we work really hard to grow the treaty's membership and make sure that the norm impacts those states outside the treaty as well.
Yeah, and a very bold start, which helped the Nobel Committee reach its conclusion to awarding the Nobel Peace Prize this year. But there are critics out there who argue that, you know, just even carrying out a ban, treaty is pointless without the participation of key nuclear-armed states like the United States and Russia. How do you respond to that, and how could you bring them on board?
Well, I think that we can't expect that law should be adjusted by those that move the slowest, by the worst one amongst us. Just because we can't guarantee that there will be no human rights violation doesn't mean we shouldn't have human rights law. This treaty sets the norm, and now we're going to work to bring all the other states up to that norm. We've seen with other weapons prohibitions, such as on the biological and chemical weapons, but also landmines and cluster munitions, that despite some states, some of the main users and producers not being a part of the negotiations or signing on to the treaty, it still impacts them, and it still changes their policies and making disarmament happen.
Yeah, and how you can get the buy-in of governments like the U.S. and Russia is to create a public pressure campaign, right, to generate that public awareness and also to create enough of a stigma so that they force their governments to change. Is that right? Absolutely.
We want it to be an easier decision to disarm. I think we saw, for example, with President Obama's Prague speech, that it was extremely forward-looking, but then nuclear weapons were still seen as prestigeful, so it makes it difficult to act on it. We're trying to help nuclear-armed states by making nuclear weapons more unattractive, more difficult to maintain, and just basically more of a hassle, not so beneficial for you.
Yeah, and you're trying to create that stigma, right? But how do you create that stigma against nuclear weapons in a place like North Korea, where having a nuclear arsenal is about, some analysts say, regime survival and of tremendous national pride?
Absolutely. I think that we have allowed nuclear weapons to be a symbol of security, a symbol of surviving as a state. Whereas, of course, the idea that indiscriminately slaughter hundreds of thousands of civilians is not something you should want to build security on. It's not something that reasonable countries should have. And the first step to addressing North Korea is to also stop behaving in the same way.
And a final question for you. How optimistic are you about being able to reach your goal here, especially given just the level of the nuclear threat that is out there, just these very, just the nuclear barbs that we've heard earlier this year between Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un? How optimistic are you that we'd be able to move beyond this and actually one day eliminate all nuclear weapons?
It's, of course, going to be a very long process. It's not going to happen overnight. But we have seen quite drastic change of policies on other issues. Things that seemed unlikely in the past suddenly happens. And when people's mindsets change about things like civil rights, women's right to vote, slavery, suddenly progress happens very, very fast. So I think that what we're really doing is to create the first step for making that change of mindset.
Well, Beatrice, Fihn, to you and your team at ICAN, congratulations once again for winning the 2017 Nobel Peace Prize. And thank you for joining us here on the program. Take care.
Thank you.